Hi, this is Sarit Switzer, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast, a podcast devoted to the teachings of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi as recorded in his most famous work, the Tanya. My hope for this show is to make these teachings accessible and relatable to the average person, regardless of prior Jewish education or affiliation. The episodes follow the prescribed daily study portions and are meant to serve as practical lessons in how to live your life as your true self and develop an authentic and powerful relationship with your Creator. I have personally experienced the effects the study of this work has had on me, and I'm excited to share what I can of this knowledge with you. So please join me on this journey of learning, self-growth, and connection with your source. Hi, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast. This is episode 336 for the 29th of Tishrei in a leap year. So today we are going to discuss an existential quandary, which really only is a question, which really only makes sense, which really might only occur to a person if they have some background in Hasidus or in these types of teachings. Namely, addressing the seeming paradox of the fact that while God is one, creation is many. So what do I mean by this? And what do I mean by the fact that this is like a quandary that would only come up if you had some background in Hasidus? So when we talk about God being one, monotheism, right? So we know that Judaism is actually not the only monotheistic religion in the world. There are other religions in the world that believe in only one God. There is a concept that we were the ones that actually initiated this idea, that Abraham was the one who introduced monotheism into the world. But nevertheless, we know that there are many people in the world who are monotheistic. It's very possible to believe in one God and also to believe that there's a multiplicity in creation, that there's many different types of creation, right? It's not that difficult. It's not really a question. It's like you could have one God, just like you could have one person who writes many books, right? Or one person who paints many pictures. So you could have one God who creates many things in the world, right? So like, what's the issue? What's the question? So the question comes up, and the reason why it becomes a question is when you learn about God and when you learn about creation from a Hasidic perspective, from the perspective of Hasidus, where we learn that actually it's not that there's God and then there's creation, but that nothing exists apart from God, and that everything in creation is utterly and totally dependent upon God for its life force and for its existence. And it's constantly being created something from nothing at all times. So it's not so much like the person writing the different books or painting the different pictures. It's more like a person having thoughts. It's more like a person having all kinds of different thoughts, and those different thoughts are really one and the same with the person, right? Like you can't distinguish a person's thoughts from their person. And even that is not a perfect analogy, but it gives us a little bit of a closer sense, a semblance of what is going on with God. So it's like if a person has like a dream, right? A person can have many dreams, many daydreams. However, if a person stops thinking about the particular dream, assuming that they never wrote it down, that they never told it to anybody, if it's just in their head, once a person stops thinking about it, it ceases to exist at that moment, right? And it can only come back into existence if the person's constantly putting their attention on that dream, on that idea. So similarly with God and the creation of the world can only exist, the world can only subsist, can only be here if there's this constant input from God, something for nothing at all times. So thus, when we think about it in that way, then the question becomes a real question. How can we have multiplicity in creation if God is really one? So sure, a person can have a dream, but they can only dream about one thing at one time, right? A person can only think about one thing at one time. Like the idea of multitasking or multi-thinking is actually a misnomer. Like it's impossible to actually focus on more than one thing at one time. But yet we see with God that we live in this multiplicity of creation, but yet we have learned in Hasidus that really there is nothing apart from God. So how is this possible? How do we have these two things? That we live in this world that is very diverse, that is has lots of multiplicity, but yet God is one, single, unified. So how do we address this? So this is the question we're going to address today, and we're going to answer it today. And the simple answer is that it's all about perception. It's all about what God chooses to manifest in terms of his unity. So truly, yes, everything is one. Everything, there is no existence apart from God. However, this unity, this oneness descends through different levels of perception that display, that kind of refract this light in different ways, such so as to seem like that there is a multiplicity within creation. An image that comes to mind for me for this is my own kind of analogy, is a kaleidoscope. So in a kaleidoscope, the way that it works is that you have different mirrors that are reflecting off one another. And then these different mirrors create this illusion that even if there's just a few, let's say you can create your own at-home kaleidoscope. It's actually really simple. You take a few colored beads or something like that, and you put them at the end of a tube, and then you go inside of the tube. You set up these walls that are all mirrors so that the mirrors reflect off one another. And then you place the beads at the end of this tube into another tube that you allow to rotate. I hope I'm explaining this correctly. You can also Google it, by the way, and look on YouTube how to create your own at-home kaleidoscope. And then you rotate that tube, and it looks like those beads, let's say you had 10 beads in there, it actually looks like there are a lot more beads, and they look very diverse and dynamic and moving. There's a lot going on. So so that's kind of an analogy that comes to mind in thinking about this illusion of multiplicity that we see with the kaleidoscope. It's similar to our existence here on earth. It's similar to the worlds. The multiplicity of the worlds is actually an illusion. In true truth, there is only unity. There is only oneness, one God. So let's get into the text and see how the Alter Rebbe explains this. And it's a pretty short section today. And for context, we're still in the middle of Epistle 25, where we're getting into this whole discussion of unity and how God is found in everything and animates everything. And again, we started off this discussion talking about anger management, making it really concrete in the sense of how when a person does something to you that triggers your anger, that is a good time to actually acknowledge the fact that the person isn't actually doing anything to you. It's all coming from God, because there is nothing but God. So the Alter Rebbe begins with a citation from Zechariah, chapter 14, verse 9, where it says, Hashem echad u'shmo echad. God is one and his name is one. We say this during our prayers also, we say this in the Shema prayer. We say Hashem echad u'shmo echad. It's a common idea that God is one and his name is one. And so the Alter Rebbe goes on and he says that we've explained this, that we said that what does this mean on a deeper level? That God is one and his name is one. So meaning that God's speech, which is the spirit of his mouth, which is what is referred to in the Holy Zohar as God's name, this is unified and one with God. Nevertheless, the radiance and the vitality that comes down from the spirit of God's mouth divides up into 4 different distinct levels, which are the 4 worlds. So if you've been following along this podcast for a while, you've noticed that there are 4 general worlds, spiritual worlds, and these 4 worlds are known as Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya. Loosely translated as Atzilus is emanation, Bria is creation, Yetzirah is formation, and Asiya is action. I'm not going to go into deep detail here as to what they all are. I've done that in other podcast episodes. You can also do your own research around it, but that's the basic idea. There's these 4 basic levels. And so this spirit of God's mouth descends down, even though its source, it is essentially unified. It's one thing, but nevertheless, the way it comes down, it goes through 4 levels. And the difference in terms of these 4 levels, what do we mean by different levels, is in terms of the different contractions and different screens. And it goes through many different screens, many different contractions. And these contractions cause the contraction of the light and the vitality to hide it so that it will not shine so much in the world of Bria, for example, as it shines in the world of Atzilus. And it won't shine so much in the world of Yetzirah as it does in those higher worlds due to the greater constrictions in all of those worlds. However, when it comes to the essence of the Shekhinah, which again, if you've been following along, maybe taking notes, the Shekhinah is synonymous with Dvar Hashem, with the speech of Hashem, and with Ruach Piv, with the spirit of God's mouth. So there's no change in, God forbid, in the essence of the Shekhinah. And even in terms of the radiance of and the drawing down, the descent of this vitality, meaning the descent that comes down from Atzilus, this descent, this radiance pierces through the masach, pierces through the screen, and it becomes enclosed in Bria. And so too from Bria to Yetzirah, and from Yetzirah to Asiyah. So meaning to say, what are we trying to say here is that the essence, this essential unity of the Dvar Hashem that is found in its source, it does pierce through all of these levels. It's just that we don't perceive it as such because it goes through these different contractions. And thus, we say that we can see that the light of the Ein Sof, the light of the infinite light of God that is found in Atzilus, is also found in Asiyah, which is in the lowest of all worlds, in our physical material world, through it being enclosed in the Malchus of Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiyah. So it goes through, again, as we explained before, and it is explained, elaborated upon in the writings of the Arizal of blessed memory. So this we've spoken about this quite at length. Especially what comes to mind is in Epistle 20, where we really got into the technicalities of how this works. That basically that the Malchus of Atzilus becomes enclosed, which is the source of all of this. It's the essential light of God, becomes enclosed in each one of the Malchus of each of the other worlds. So the bottom line, so that's the end of the section for today. And so the bottom takeaway from all of this is that God's essential oneness, his unity, which is manifest through the Dvar Hashem, manifest through his speech, remains unified. It remains one throughout the multiplicity of creation. The only difference is in terms of how it comes down to us in a way that it goes through a series of contractions and a series of screens, like different types of blockages that cause this sense of multiplicity when really the truth is unity. Sort of like how when you have that kaleidoscope, Lahavdil, it's like you have those different mirrors, and those mirrors, putting in those mirrors there, they serve to kind of like block the light from going directly to see the beads, and rather create this illusion of multiplicity within the beads. So that's it for today, and we'll continue along these lines tomorrow, and I will speak to you then. Thanks for listening to the It Is Taught podcast, hosted by Sarit Switzer. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory of my maternal grandfather, Avraham Yitzchak ben Binyamin HaKohen of blessed memory. Music by Shoshana. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others and subscribe on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review. To find out more about the It Is Taught project, including more information on my soon-to-be published book, please visit our website, itistaught.com. To catch the latest from me, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and until then, have a great day.